Good morning, ECED 2360 students. So I'm making this video so you can kind of see what we're doing for the next couple weeks. So last week we worked in Module 2. So Module 2 was really talking about, the inclusion policies, the practices. This week and next week for this Module 3, we're really going to be looking at the likenesses and differences among child. So to be more specific, what causes the disabilities, classifying the different types of disabilities, and then looking at each individual disability by type. So remember, for each module, we're working in it for 2 weeks. So last week you did a discussion board. So how we get to the modules is, of course, is using the table of contents. So last week was Module 2, which you had to do an assignment, which was a discussion board. Well, this week and next week, for the next 2 weeks, your assignment is really going to be working at a case study. So I wanted to draw your attention to the section right under Module 2 called Case Studies. Okay, so there are some children here, and you're going to be completing a PowerPoint about a specific disability. So we're going to talk a little bit as we get into the assignment of the case study, but I wanted to draw your attention to the different types of case studies we have. Okay, so the case studies are based on real children. Okay, so they may have a pseudonym name or a different name that they go under, but the diagnosis and the discussion about the different disabilities is about the student. So what I want you to do is you're going to be looking at the case study. Now, I want you to choose which one you would like to do, and then I want you to email me. So if we'll scroll down to Module 3, and if you scroll all the way down, you're going to see the assignment section, which is case study work, okay? And I've got 2 links here for you. So let's click on the first one. So it says that at the end of the first week of this module, so at the end of this week on Sunday, you're going to receive information about which case study you'll be part of. Okay, so you can find the case study where I just showed you, and you're going to figure out which one you would like to do. Now it says I will choose it for you, but I want you to email me which one interests you, and then I will get back with you about which one I think that you should do. It's going to be depending on how many students choose the same one. I would like everyone to choose a different case study to work on. I don't want everyone doing the same one. That's why I say you will receive information. So your job sometime this week is to email me which case study you would like to work on. And then by the end of the week, I'll get with you and let you know which one, if I'm okay with you choosing that one or should you choose a different one. So that's what that means. When you click the next section, it's going to go into more detail about the assignment for Module 3. So your case study really is going to be a PowerPoint on the disability. So when you choose that case study with that specific student, it'll tell you what kind of disability they were diagnosed with. You're going to have to complete a PowerPoint presentation about that specific disability that the child has in the case study. Okay, so when you create the PowerPoint, I really want you to think about the disability or the condition that that child has. Okay, so the purpose of this whole project is really to be informed about the child's condition, which you as a early childhood educator is going to have to know. So this is going to impact that child in the educational setting. So it's important for us to be able to plan appropriately within that setting for that child. You need to understand the condition. How do you plan around that? Thinking about the child's age, how is that going to affect things that happen within the classroom? So these are things I want you to think about. This is what that whole point of the project is about and how it's going to help you. So some things that I want included in the PowerPoint, remember you're going to complete this and tell me what the disability is. Okay, so you should have the following information. I want you to look under the Tennessee State Department of Education, where it says the section Special Education Eligibility. So under that section, It's really going to let you define the condition, define the disability category that they're going to receive underneath that section. So make sure you do that. The next one is the assessment. How is it determined that this child actually qualifies for a disability? So make sure that you talk about that and include that. You need to include the cause or the prevalence of the disability. Give me some characteristics of the disability. Okay, so what's across the lifespan, meaning from that child, infants, all the way up to adulthood. What are some of the considerations? What are some of the characteristics? Does it change as that child grows? And then I also want you to think about the educational considerations. Think about the early childhood environment. What method and strategies or accommodations that you will have to do for that child. And remember, this is really focusing on the age of the case study child. So always go back to the age of that child inside your case study. Think about the environmental adaptations, right? Those physical changes, schedule changes, any kind of access that child has or any needs, how that's going to impact the child. What kind of social supports are available? So does the child, have any kind of supports in the classroom socially? Are there things that can be done to maybe encourage those social skills and thinking about that disability and how social skills are impacted with that disability? Are the peers accepted into the group? Is a child accepted by their peers, into the group? So these are things you need to think about. Also, support means family support. Okay, so do they have resources available to them? You also need to make sure that you use resources. So I do want you to cite your resources at the end, so you should have a bibliography or reference page. You do need to use the APA format. Okay, so we'll look at that in a minute to show you where to go. There's a video here for you, but I'm going to show you a section in the library that's really going to help you. Okay, so when we're thinking about format in the PowerPoint, I want you to think about, first, putting your name. Okay, you don't have to put group members because this is an online class, so we're not going to be doing a group presentation. This is an individual presentation. Whatever font you choose, make sure it's accessible. All right, so make sure the headings and the italics, that it's readable. Okay, don't use colors that are distracting. Also, make sure that you have at least 4 slides with images. Okay, so one of those could be a graph or a chart. Okay, so the images have to be related to the content. So whatever you're talking about, make sure that image supports it. And make sure the content just flows well, it's organized, and it makes sense. And then just also check for errors, grammars, and punctuation. Okay. So there's a rubric here that I put that's available to you, that I put together, that talks about the supporting standard, right? So the standard that this PowerPoint is supporting is child development and learning and context. So you have a possible 25 points for this project. Let's walk through the different criteria of how you're going to be graded. So the first one we're going to be looking at is key competencies, right? We have to understand and value that each child has an individual, unique developmental variation, okay? Do you understand the ways that the child develops their learning process in different contexts? This would include family, culture, language, those sorts of things. The next one is looking at the required information. Are you including all these sections up here that I said it should include, or are you missing competencies? So if you're missing anything a little bit, if you're missing a lot, right, it would be 069, meets expectations, and then exceeds expectations. Now, as we dive deeper into each section of whether you did not meet, you met, or you exceed, if you'll look, there's a difference. So I always tell students you need to at least aim to get meet expectations. You need to see that you have all the information, right, is included. You were thinking about the child's age and the disability within the case study. You're thinking about the development of the child. You have your sources in APA format listed. Okay, you have the minimum of 4 graphics in there. and the materials related to the content. So that's how we're going to break up your score of 25 points. Okay, so that's the assignment that you will turn in. And then you will, of course, have your Module 3 quiz. There's always going to be a quiz at the end of each module. So let's go to assessments and click on Dropbox. Okay, so you'll see here, February 19th is when this project is due. It says Case Study Disability PowerPoint Module 3, so that's due February 19th. Now, I wanted to show you where you can find those resources for the APA citations. So if you click on the ws.edu, that's going to take you to the Water State homepage. I want you to select Library. Okay, so if you'll see here, there's a section called Citing Your Sources. If you click on it, there is going to be an APA guide to create in-text citations, format your paper, and complete your reference page. This is a wonderful resource. Also want to encourage you to reach out to any of the library research coaches because they're a wonderful resource for you as far as giving you help and assistance. So when you click on it, it's going to show you, okay, there's a video, there's actually the official website. Another great resource that I even utilize is called Purdue's Online Writing Lab, or Purdue OWL. And this is really going to help you walk through the different kinds of ways that you are going to use text. Now, there are in-text citations, which if you're including any source inside of your PowerPoint, you may want to do an in-text citation as well as your reference list, right? So you've got the basic rules, you've got how do you cite them inside the actual text itself. So these are really good resources for you to use. Okay, so another resource I wanted to show you is if we go back into the actual course, and let's go back to the assignment itself, I want to show you what it was talking about when you're going to be like researching some of the assignment. So it'll be the second one. So when you click on it, it talks about the Tennessee State Department of Education. And you're going to specifically look under special education eligibility. So let's go there. Tennessee, where was I just at? Okay, the Tennessee State Department of Education. Help if I can type. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to click on that. And remember, you're looking for special education eligibility. Okay, so you can type up here. I would just copy and paste. Sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it's a little bit easier than having to type. Okay, so let's paste and let's hit go. I'm very slow today, I apologize. Okay, so we're going to click on the first link, Special Education Evaluation and Eligibility. Okay, so if you'll see here, it's going to talk about disability evaluations and eligibility, which is what we need. It's a little bit slow today, guys. I apologize. So you'll see here you have all the different disability categories. So you can use that to help you when you're researching for your actual PowerPoint and putting this together. Okay, so you'll choose that and then you will put your PowerPoint together. So let's go back. Okay, so where you are going to find your case studies is actually right underneath Module 2. So this is the first section I pulled up when we first started. So you have Clayton, Tiffany, Maria, Joey, Johnny, Lily. You're going to pick one of those that kind of interests you, so I would read through them all, and then you email me which case study sounds interesting to you, and then we'll go from there, because some students may choose the same one. Like I said, I really want you to have different case studies, okay? I want you to each do a different case study. So let's go back to Module 3, and I want us to look at the content itself. So remember, down at the bottom are your assignments, things that you do or turn in to me, and also your quiz. You have learning resources is what I call them, so lesson 3.1 and 3.2. That's what's going to help you understand and engage with content so that you can be able to not only meet those learning goals, but also to help you with your assignment itself. So how I tell students to do this, and I think I told this to you in the last video, is to try to break it up where you do one lesson each week. So 3.1 could be this week and 3.2 can be next week. While you're in the middle of this, you can also be working on your case study. But in order to do really well on your quizzes, you really need to be engaged in the content, which is the learning resources or the lessons. So let's go ahead and look at our overview. Okay, so the overview is really talking about likenesses and differences among children, okay? So a typical child development depends on, how they're thriving, their environment, their upbringing. But sometimes a child may have a disability or a delay. So this is going to determine what type of development or how that child develops. So, and this could be educational-wise, socially, all of those things, behavior, these things are all taken into consideration. So what you're going to be doing as you're going through lesson 3.1, you're going to be reading, of course, the focus questions and the overview and the learning objectives, which is what we're going through now. Read the vocabulary to see what you're going to be learning about. Read the assigned textbook chapters. And then you're going to look through all the links within the module content itself, and then I have video links available for you too as well. So one thing I do want to encourage you to, there's a lot of information here. It could be overwhelming at times. I would encourage you, sometimes you don't have time to do all the videos, all the links. Save them to your device. You can go back and reference or look at those later. That will help you maybe with a future assignment. So these are things to think about. Remember, if you have any questions, you can post them. I have a question discussion board. The easiest thing to do, though, is honestly just email me, because I check that often, at least every day. I don't get to the question. I have a question discussion board every day. So just email me if you have a question. And then also your assignment, which is what we discussed first, which is going to be your case study. That's what you're going to be turning in. And then you will take the Module 3 quiz. So our learning objectives this week are really going to be able to describe children, which we call typical or atypical, developmentally delayed, at-risk, and gifted. So I want you to be able to distinguish between those definitions and describe those children. I also want you to list several possible causes of developmental disabilities. You should be able to discuss the correlation between poverty and developmental disabilities in young children. I want you to be able to discuss and correlate recognize the federal educational categories of disability. I also want you to discuss any kind of sensory problems, describe their impact on developmental young children. I want you to think about the possible effects of physical and health disabilities and how they impact the development of children and education in young children. And I also want you to discuss the learning and behavioral disabilities. and describe their impact on the development of children, young children, in their education. Okay, so remember, these outcomes here really support you to meet the course outcomes. These are your learning objectives, and these learning objectives are going to help us with our course outcomes, which was identify recommended practices and elements for inclusive early childhood programs, and know and understand the cause, classification, and characteristics of developmental disabilities. So here are some guiding questions for you. We have 5 guiding questions for lesson 3.1, and then we have 6 questions for lesson 3.2. And these are just to really help guide your learning, get you to think about the content in a deeper meaning as you're going through it. Okay, for textbook chapters, you're going to be reading 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These textbook chapters really are going to help go along with the content. So chapter 4 is really going to be normal and developmental children. Okay, and chapter 5 is developmental disabilities, causes, and classifications. Chapter 6 is about sensory impairments, hearing, and vision. 7 is physical disabilities and health problems. And then chapter 8 is about learning and behavioral disorders. So these are things I want you to read and learn about. Okay, here's the vocabulary for you. Things to be thinking about, things that we will come across in our content. Okay, so then we actually start getting into the actual first week lesson, which is typical or atypical. Okay, so what do we mean by typical or atypical, and what is meant by it? So we need to be able to define these things. So this module is really going to be concerned with the similarities and differences that overlap characteristics of children, of what they need to be typical or atypical. So we're thinking about those developmental challenges, or those who are at risk or gifted. So those are the things that we're looking at. Okay, so what is your role as a childhood educator for early childhood? And how do you monitor the child's development? Okay, so why that's important for you to understanding those milestones, those developmental milestones. Okay, and what's the unique role that you play in that child's development? The next section in this week is really talking about the causes of developmental disabilities. Okay, so there's a lot of things here. There is a graph here that talks about the vulnerability of the fetus during the developmental period of the pregnancy. So this is really important for you to kind of look at and learn a little bit about of what they say causes developmental disabilities. Okay, now the next is really going to get into the classification and defining the educational disabilities. So right here is a really good link under IDEIA. Okay, so it's the Individual Disability Education Improvement Act, which is really going to give you a brief overview of the different categories of disabilities under IDEIA, okay, and the terms listed. The second section here is really going to be talking specifically about the Part C of IDEIA, which is the Early Intervention for Early Childhood. So that's something important to look at as well. Okay, and this as well, which is specifically for a Tennessee Department of Special Education. Okay, the next section is really talking about young children, gifted and talented. So what are the characteristics of those children? And I have some links here for you to look at as well. Okay. So that was all of 3.1, which you should do this week. The next week, we're diving into 3.2, which is really going through the disabilities by types. So as you'll look, we have sensory impairment, the supports for sensory impairment, we have physical disabilities or health issues, the physical disability and health impairment supports provided for those children, and then we dive into, lastly, those learning or behavior disabilities. So let's look at the first section here. sorry, my computer is slow today. Okay, so here's the sensory impairments. So when we're talking about this section, we're looking at visual impairment, right? Vision impairment, we're looking at hearing loss. And what's the impact on young children, okay? We're also talking about, obviously with hearing, the speech is impacted. Okay, so here's where you're going to learn about this term speech banana. And this basically is just a term that they use to describe phonemes or sounds of human speech which appear on an audiogram. Okay, so this is really interesting. Make sure that you look at this, okay? And this is the degree to which they have hearing loss, okay? And then we talk about sensory processing disorder, which is also something that we need to look into. There's a video that really, a mother speaks about her family's journey in getting her son treatment for sensory impairment, or sensory process disorder, and how it changed the relationship. So it's pretty good information there. It's a really neat video for you to watch. Okay, so what are some of the supports put in place for those who have sensory impairment? And remember, this is talking about those with hearing loss, for speech, all those sorts of things. Okay, then we're getting into more of the physical disabilities or health issues, right? There's a really great article in here. There's a website that talks about Band-Aids and blackboards. This is really stories about children themselves, which may surprise you. It's really, really good resource for you. The article is really neat because it talks about ADHD, okay, and learning and behavior disorders, and that it follows under ADHD or other health impairment. So this is something I also want you to look at as well. And there's a website for the National Resource Center on ADHD as well. Okay, so the next section is about the supports for those who have physical disabilities or health impairments. And in the last section we're getting to is talking about those learning or behavioral disabilities like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Okay, and you'll see it tells you what each one is. They're having difficulty with writing, with math, difficulty processing language, and then it goes into also talking about different behavior disorders. And then lastly, you have the supports that are available for those students who have learning or behavioral disabilities. Okay. All right, so that would be everything that you would do. So remember, 3.1 is this week, 3.2 is next week. You also need to start putting together your PowerPoints. Before you can do that, you really need to email me which case study interests you. I will get back with you at the end of the week, say yes, that works, or no, you have to choose a different one. Our class is pretty small. If you want to see who's in our class, if you go under course tools and you hit class list, it's going to tell you how many of us there are. You can see we don't have a lot. There may be repeats because there are only 6 case studies, but I don't want everyone doing the same thing. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay. All right, so I'll be looking forward to hearing from your email. If you have any questions, I'm available. You can call my office, we can meet Teams, or just email me any questions that you may have. All right, guys, I hope that you have a great couple of weeks, and this content is this is one of my favorite modules because it really dives deep into the different disabilities and the supports and what your role is in developmental disabilities for early childhood. So I feel like this is really a good week, and I'm excited too for you to put together your PowerPoints based on your case studies. These are really great case studies, so I look forward to looking at those. All right, guys, until next time, take care.